Not too far behind me there is the place where I first set foot on Australian soil in 1966. This is Fremantle in Western Australia, and we're going to take you for a little look around. We've been coming up and filming the place for the last few weeks, trying to get as much footage as we can and visit as many of the attractions as we can. So relax and enjoy this little tour of Fremantle with us, and when you get the chance, come down and have a look for yourself. One of the best ways to get around Fremantle is to use the cats. These are free buses that take in most of the interesting places around the city centre. There are two routes, the red cat and the blue cat. They run every 10 to 15 minutes for the main part of daylight hours, and you can just hop on, see something that interests you, and hop off again. Before we start to look at the attractions in Fremantle, let's find out a bit about the history. The port city of Fremantle was given new life when Australia won the America's Cup yacht race in 1983. Prior to that, it had become rather run down and was lacking in that vital spark that gives life to a city. The triumph of winning the America's Cup may have been short-lived, but Fremantle has benefited from the win ever since. Buildings were repainted and renovated, new businesses started up, and the Cappuccino Strip was born when a series of restaurants and eateries became popular along South Terrace. 36 years later, there are signs that things in Freo may have started to slow down a bit. There are quite a few buildings now up for lease, but the general vibe in the city is still upbeat and positive. Fremantle was named after Captain Charles Howe Fremantle, who arrived aboard the HMS Challenger to prepare for the coming of the first European settlers to Western Australia. Captain Fremantle claimed the whole of the west coast for Britain on the 2nd of May 1829. Unlike Perth, Fremantle has retained most of its heritage buildings and is an outstanding example of early colonial architecture. You can walk down some of the streets and imagine that you are back in the early 1900s, with all sorts of commerce and trade being conducted. Initially, it was not an ideal location for a port at all. A rock bar blocked access to the Swan River, and the anchorage outside the river in the Coburn Sound was subject to violent winter storms. Prior to the removal of the rock bar, it had been Albany, not Fremantle, that was the state's primary port. Fremantle Harbour was officially opened in 1897, after the rock bar had been blasted away, and the north and south moles were constructed. Well, that's probably enough of the history of Fremantle. What about the city today? Fremantle is really an eclectic collection of fishermen, traders, artists, families that can trace their origins back there for generations, and people from around Australia and around the world who have decided to make this place their home. The Cappuccino Strip is the food and drinks heart of Fremantle, and if you look around, there are some pretty good bargains to be had. Wander down the alleyways, and you'll find places like Sushi with Goons. Here you can get a great Japanese-style meal for under $15. Pretty good value these days. There are many attractions that bring visitors to Fremantle, and one of the foremost is Fishing Boat Harbour. This is still a place where working fishing boats are moored, but it also has a number of very attractive restaurants that take full advantage of the picturesque location. British settlement has always been closely followed by the construction of two things: a jail and a courthouse. Fremantle was no exception, and the first jail, now known as the Roundhouse, dates from 1831. It is the oldest European-made structure in Western Australia. It was saved from demolition in 1922, when the harbour master claimed that it sheltered his house from the fierce northwesterly winds. A tunnel was dug beneath the hill that the roundhouse sits on in 1837 to allow easy access for the transport of goods to Bathers Beach, that at the time was known as Whalers Beach. A whaling station was located there, and it was the whaling company who paid for the construction of the tunnel. Other attractions include the Army Museum, the Old Fremantle Jail, the Maritime Museum, Shipwrecks Museum, Fremantle Markets and the Esplenade Markets. There certainly is plenty to see and do in Fremantle. Fremantle Markets date from 1897. They're open on Fridays, Saturdays and Sundays each week. They're the original markets in Fremantle, but they did cease operating in the 1930s due to the Great Depression. In the years after the Depression, the buildings were used as a warehouse. Restoration took place in the mid-1970s, and the market started operating again in 1975. There are all sorts of goods available at the markets, and there is a fresh fruit and vegetable section in addition to the food stalls and curio stands. It's always crowded and a very lively place to visit. Outside, you'll often find talented street performers putting on a show.
By law, I am obliged to say this to you. If I do actually hit you, I'm sorry. Okay. You just tipped it over there, didn't you? Back up on your head, hold it nice and still. Perfect, Christy. All right, ladies and gentlemen, after this, the second part of the show, second part of my finale, catching the ball on my head, the most difficult trick I know how to do. Stick around, check it out. Attempt number 1. Come on, Bruce. It's so exciting, isn't it? Especially with a real person. Don't move, Christy.
Down at Fremantle doing some filming for a video, we've come across this really interesting artwork down along Marine Terrace. It's out of the main area and worthwhile coming to have a look at. So if you hop on the Blue Cat and head down, you'll find this. It goes through both streets. It goes along South Terrace and Marine Terrace. Really worthwhile hopping off the Blue Cat and having a wander around and having a look at the artwork. Quite amazing. The business is apparently called East-West Design. I guess they must be the ones responsible for the artwork on here. Sells furniture and all sorts of bits and pieces by the looks of it. We'll go in and have a look in a minute just to see what's in there. But this artwork on the outside is amazing. The work that's gone into this is quite considerable. Quite a large building and both sides of it all painted up. And this is the inside of the shed that's, or the large building I should say, that's East-West Design. Quite an icon apparently now down in South Fremantle. We'll just take you on a little tour around, show you some of the items if you're looking for unusual furniture, something rather spectacular, different. There's all sorts of gear in here. We're just going to take a little wander around. Worthwhile coming down to South Freo and having a look around. If you want to just have a look at the mural, fine. But if you're in the market for some unusual furniture for your home or your business, this is really the place to come and have a look as well. This place is just massive. It would take you half a day or more to, probably a whole day, to have a look around in here and see all the gear they've got. Really a very, very interesting store to come in and have a look at. I'm standing outside what must be one of the most inspired places to ever put Maritime Museum, right on the edge of Fremantle Harbour. The Maritime Museum down at Freo is really worth having a look at, so we're going to take you for a quick look around inside now. I hope you enjoy the little tour, and when you get down this way, make sure to come in and have a look for yourselves. There's plenty to see, and the exhibits do change quite frequently, so get down here and have a good look around. The WA Maritime Museum has several different galleries that explore Western Australia's relationship with the sea. Two of the main exhibits are the Oberon-class submarine HMAS Ovens and the famous winged keel yacht Australia 2 that was in great part responsible for the renewal of Fremantle in the 1980s. The museum is open 7 days a week from 9:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. It does close on Good Friday, Christmas Day, Boxing Day and New Year's Day. There is an entry fee which varies depending on what parts of the museum you want to visit. You can take a guided tour through the HMAS Ovens. That will incur an additional fee, as will any feature exhibits that happen to be on at the time you visit. There's a cafe at the museum where you can purchase food and drinks. Guided tours are available, or you can take a self-guided tour using your mobile device and accessing the audio tour guide. Another interesting attraction in Fremantle is the Army Museum. There are so many things to see here that you need to set aside at least half a day to see it all properly. The museum is open from 10:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. from Wednesdays to Saturdays. The museum is located at the old artillery barracks on Burt Street, and there is an entry fee that helps with the upkeep of the museum and its extensive exhibits. One of the many iconic buildings in Fremantle is the Old Insane Asylum. The building dates from 1861 and operated as an asylum until the early 1900s. The buildings were then used for a number of different purposes before becoming a centre for the arts in 1972. Perhaps the best known of all Fremantle's heritage buildings is also one with the darkest history. The Fremantle Prison was built by convict labour between 1852 and 1859. It continued to operate as a prison until 1991. Soon after the closure, conservation work began to ensure the site was maintained for future generations. A private company operated tours from the prison from 1992, but control returned to the government in 2002. The prison continues to offer tours to the public, including a night tour and a tour of the tunnels beneath the prison. When we were in Fremantle over a period of several weeks filming this video, we stayed at Terrace Central B&B Hotel. The hotel is situated just opposite Fremantle Hospital and is a 5-minute walk from the centre of town. The rooms are all decorated in different styles, and the last of the three we stayed at was the Red Room. This is done out in a Parisian style. The hotel has been created by the combination of two old terrace houses, and it has been beautifully restored. We can highly recommend it as a place to stay while you're visiting our port city. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up, and if you enjoy the channel, please subscribe. The more subscribers we get, the more notice YouTube takes of us, and the more money hopefully we'll get for creating new videos in future. We hope to see you again soon. Cheers for now.